photo editing can be a little bit daunting, so I'm going to have a go at editing 3 or 4 photographs to show that you can make a massive improvement by just doing 4 or 5 changes. So we'll start by opening this file open. One of the things you have to get used to is analysing your own photographs, see the faults that are in them. This particular photograph has got quite a few faults. First of all, the whole thing's a little bit pale and lacking in oomph. There's rubbish at the sides of the picture which detract from the overall image, which is the traction engine in the house. And the house itself is leaning over a bit towards one side. So let's try and sort those things out one at a time. First thing we need to do here with this picture is crop it. So we find the crop tool, which is down there. And at the bottom you'll see that we have a variety of different settings, different sizes, different shapes. But I would recommend that initially you go for no restriction. That allows you to do whatever you want with the crop. So the actual program itself has made a few suggestions. It's brought this side in quite a lot, all the way from there. It's brought the sky bit down quite a way too, and it's brought this one in. Now we want to do this ourselves, not rely on the computer to do it for us, but we will actually bring this side in to get rid of that rubbish. We click on that little square there, bring this in, and we'll click on this side and bring this into there. Now we've still got this, but if we pull it in that far, it's going to crowd the house a lot, so we'll put it back to about there, and we'll deal with this other bit later. And I think the computer was right to bring the sky down a bit like that as well, and perhaps bring the bottom up a fraction, make it more of a rectangle. And if we're happy with what we've got there, we can click on the tick. And if we look over on the right hand side here, we can see that we've got our history, which shows that we've opened it and then we've cropped it. If that's missing on your program, click on Window, find History and put a tick by it. So that's a start. Now we've still got the crop tool selected. We don't want that, so we'll go up here, click on the Move tool, which is safest. Now let's try and straighten this up a little bit. If we click on Image, Transform, Skew, you get these little boxes again at the corners. But this time if we grab the top one, pull it a bit to one side, and if we look here we can see that's nice and parallel with the edge, that's nice and parallel with the edge. So we sorted that little problem out. Click on the tick and that's done. Now what about these washed out colours? It's the tones within the image that are wrong, and we sort those by looking at levels. So up here we click on Enhance, Adjust Lighting, and we see levels. We also see here that if we press Ctrl and L, the levels would have come up without us having to use the mouse. Now this looks a bit confusing, but what we have here is a measure of the tones within the image, which go from black at this end to white at this end and the mid-tones. And the problem we have here is with the mid-tones. So if we click on this middle thing here and move it across, we suddenly find, if we can go too far with this, we suddenly find it's got a lot more going about it. Okay, so click on OK, happy with that. And now all we've got to do is get rid of this thing here. Now Elements provides us with 2 different tools. There's the clone tool and the healing brush tool. The healing brush tool is like the clone tool on steroids. It has a lot of artificial intelligence built into it, which sometimes works well and other times confuses matters. So for this we'll stick with the clone tool. Now you see that little circle, that's what's called the brush, and we can increase the size of the brush with the right square bracket, or we can decrease it with the left square bracket. And if we want to get in a little bit closer, we can hold the Control key and hit the plus, and now we zoom in. Press down the space bar and any tool changes into a hand to allow us to move the picture around. So here we go. I think I'll make that brush a little bit smaller, And if you notice here, we've got grass here, we've got a different coloured grass there as it goes up to this area. So we've got to replace all that behind these things. And the easiest way to do that is to bring the clone tool over here somewhere, hold down the Alt key, and we get our little target, which we put right on that line, and click. Take the finger off the Alt key, move the thing along without clicking, get it roughly on the line again, click and hold it down, and then draw it over the things that we want to get rid of, just like that. I see we've got a little bit here as well, so we go back over here, Alt click on the line, bring it across, and we can get rid of that. To go back to the original view, Control 0 puts it back on screen. So now we've straightened it up, we've improved the tones, we got rid of all the rubbish, and we've got a much simpler image. One final thing before we finish, and that is the size of the picture. If we go to Image, Resize Image Size, we can see that it's 15 megabytes. It is 14 inches by 10 plus inches at 180 pixels to the inch. Now we've got constrained proportions ticked, and we've got resample image. I'm going to undo a resample image, leave constrained proportions, because that means if we change one, it changes the other one automatically. Let's imagine we want to make a print of this on a A4 sheet. So we'll change the width to 10.5, and we get a height of 7.7 at 255 pixels to the inch, which will produce a very nice print. But what if we want to send it in an email? Well, if we click on View, Actual Pixels, that's the sort of thing that people would get in their email, which isn't a lot of use. So I'll Control 0 to bring it back down like that. And if we go into Image, Resize, Image Size, we now click the resample button, and we come up here, and if we change the width to something like 600 pixels and click OK, and then look at View Actual Pixels, that is the image that they would get in their email. They'd be able to see the whole picture in one go, and the overall size of it in megabytes is an awful lot smaller, and therefore it would go quicker. One final thing is to save it. So we do File, Save As, because we don't want to overwrite our original image, and it defaults to the Photoshop format. If we want to change this to a JPEG, we click on there, change it to JPEG, put a different title in here. So if we call it Old House, Old House, and click Save. Save it at the maximum. Okay. So now we've got a spare image made much smaller than the original, which we can email. So that's that one. Let's have another look at a different picture. Don't want to save any changes to that. With a different set of problems. File, Open. Let's have a look at this one. Now, the problem with this one is it's too dark, it's underexposed. I did this deliberately so that I would get lots of texture in the water. If we'd had this exposed correctly, the water would have been burnt out. And levels isn't going to be a lot of use for this, because all we can do with levels is make the shadows darker, and we don't want to make the highlights lighter. Far better, cancel, to go to Enhance, Adjust Lighting, Shadows and Highlights, And there we go. Here we can lighten the shadows without really affecting the highlights. We can even darken the highlights if we wish. And there we go. So we've gone from this to this very, very quickly. And a final one with a different set of problems. So we've had one that was overexposed, one that was underexposed, and this one is just very, very flat lighting. Boring picture look. So with this, and we got a little bit of rubbish at the bottom, so we can use our crop tool with this to get rid of the bit at the bottom. And actually we've got the shard there on the thirds, the bridge is on the thirds. It's done that for us automatically, so we will accept that. Then we'll go into levels, enhance, adjust lighting, levels, and again we can bring in this time the highlights in a little bit. That's made it a bit better, but it's still very dull and boring. So we can now go into enhance, adjust colour, adjust hue and saturation, and we can just bring the saturation up a little bit. Now we've got a little bit of colour in our image. Okay, I've noticed we didn't quite crop out this bit at the bottom, so this time we'll just try using the healing brush. We use the spot healing brush, just brush over that, bingo, that's gone. And there we have 3 different pictures, 3 sets of problems, but very similar solutions.